Heads up, as I was listing out the topics that I wanted to talk about, I realized, oh, it's going to be super US heavy. So if you are not, I mean, this is not for travel to the US, but in terms of US airline compared to Canadian Airlines, US airports, positioning, I'd mentioned that before. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. In the last week, a few things that hit my radar were a little more US airline centric. So don't be surprised. So, without further ado, I suppose the biggest news came today. We kind of got a heads up that there was a big news breaking, and there was media had been invited in Toronto at Billy Bishop. And sure enough, when the news released today, we kind of knew that Air Canada was announcing big moves, particularly at Billy Bishop, so YTZ. So, Air Canada has announced that they'll be flying to US from Billy Bishop, which is the island airport. And fantastic news for those that live in Toronto, GTA, because now you not only have options of YYZ, you can do it out of YTZ, which is Billy Bishop Island Airport. And if that's closer to you, and more, perhaps more importantly, for those that are able to connect. So if I'm going from Ottawa, if I have to get to Chicago, for example, I can now do Ottawa, YTZ onwards to Chicago. Because the four cities that they have announced will be connecting in early 2026 or sort of midway 2026. The four cities of Boston, LaGuardia, so New York, Washington, so IAD, DC, and Chicago. So those are the four cities. And all four are fantastic connections for onward travel, or if you were trying to get to these cities from Toronto to begin with, are and also are busy business hubs for people that are traveling between these cities. So, be it a Boston, be it New York or Washington, D.C. Or Chicago, if you're coming in and out of Toronto, then coming into Billy Bishop makes way more sense than going to YYZ and then having to haul yourself to the financial downtown core. It'll take you another 30, 35 minutes, even if you were doing Up Express, and then the last leg, you'll have to cab it or whatever. This is a much easier connection. So all of these four will obviously be flown on the Q400s, which, by the way, reminder, Q400s Air Canada already announced a couple of weeks ago that they were going to be redesigned. And I shared a little post on it with a picture that looks really nice in terms of the new seat ergonomics of the new seat, and the new seat design has a bit more emphasis on the tray table and the kind of space that people will have to put their laptops and work a little bit, or even put their phones around their seat, which we haven't really seen that level of emphasis on these smaller Q400s. And of course, fully Wi-Fi enabled, free Wi-Fi. Um, and premium snacks, drinks, and all of that, which Air Canada has now made sort of baseline pretty much across North America and Central America, I think. On top of that, the other good news that sort of brings this announcement of US flights from Billy Bishop is, of course, Billy Bishop will get its own US pre-clearance, which is coming early 2026. The new flights to these four destinations has been announced for spring 2026. I don't have exact dates for you, but spring 2026 is where they're at. And then they also added in news that frequencies between Montreal and Billy Bishop and Ottawa and Billy Bishop will be increased starting New Year, so starting January 1st, 2026, presumably to bring in more people so that they can eventually then start connecting to these cities through the Air Canada network. So really plugging themselves right in the midst of Porter's operation, because Porter has been flying to US out of Billy Bishop for a while now. But guess what? Competition does great things. So this is overall a great announcement. Yeah, Alex says this is great announcement for me. 8-minute bike ride. Nice. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Fantastic, Alex. Good for you. Um, yeah, and I think Denby on my post mentioned in the comments that, for somebody that lives midtown, this is fantastic. And particularly for those of us that do aspirational travel, we often, aspirational points travel, particularly, we often find ourselves trying to position to a larger US airport hub. And all four of these destinations are bigger US airport hubs for those destinations, for those airlines that may not be serving, or for a particular aircraft that may not be serving Toronto, Montreal, or even this general area of Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Halifax, that kind of vicinity. So yeah, this is great news for all involved. Did anybody catch Porter's not so subtle dig on Instagram as soon as the announcement came through? I kind of was on my feed earlier today. So basically something. Oh, Porter also is celebrating their 19th birthday. So they are 19 years old now as an airline, which is fantastic. So Porter, what did their Instagram thing say? Said something about Air Canada crashing their party. And the mascot is, in a party hat and a little slice of cake, presumably crashing their party at Billy Bishop. And then again, they were leaning hard on the fact that they've been doing everything that Air Canada is trying to do now for very many years already. So again, this one wasn't as funny as the previous dig, but I've not seen a Canadian airline be so upfront in, uh, having this banter as a corporation with another competitor. So it's both refreshing to see, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, I wish Air Canada would just sort of get in there. And I just wish, because it's great entertainment, great popcorn value. So yeah, kudos to Porter for continuing to take friendly jibes, shall I say, at their competitor. And time will tell. Time will tell how these things pan out. But as a consumer, as a passenger, this is fantastic news because, again, a lot of us listening to this call also are using Porter's network, be it through Atmos program, soon with the with the American Airlines program, because that earn and redeem partnership will kick off very quickly, or very soon. They tell us spring 2026, and are using the BMO VI Porter cards and accumulating all the points, and now being able to use that. So we are very much we are watching both of these things very closely. And then the good thing is, no matter where we want to travel out of Billy Bishop, now there's two full-on airlines that are competing and that will now compete going to those similar destinations. So happy to see that that's happening. Hopefully we see a bit of a dip in cash prices, and hopefully we see a little more award availability pop up on both sides at not so dynamically ruined prices. So fingers crossed on that. Yeah, so good news on that. Sticking to our US theme, like I said, this session today might be a little more sort of US heavy for those of you that are Canadians listening in after the fact, or those of you that are here live with me. The other one that really caught my attention also today was American Airlines announced that they will debut their Airbus A321 XLRs with flagship suites on the domestic route first, which is JFK to LAX, so New York to LA, and that flight is starting December 18th. And you will be able to book, because obviously and we've mentioned this in connection with Air Canada before, that these XLRs, once they are available, will first sort of operate within some of these transcontinental flights or transcontinental routes. Once everybody gets used to it, and by everybody, I mean crew and staff get used to the service levels, it will then eventually make its way into international destinations. So for those of you that may not know, the A321 XLRs are sort of state-of-the-art single aisle aircraft that are now all the rage in the aviation industry because of the potential of flying much longer distances and using much less fuel. So these aircrafts are good enough to fly, say, from here to Europe, many places in Europe from North America, using. Uh, don't quote me on this, but I think I read somewhere between 20 to 30% less fuel, which is fantastic. So has a lot of potential. So a lot of the airlines have bought their aircrafts waiting for delivery. Air Canada already announced their A321. So we've spoken about this. Mallorca, New Edinburgh, Toulouse, and one more. All of them will be starting out of Montreal again, spring 2026. But before spring, we're waiting for Air Canada to announce when these aircraft will be in service in the domestic routes here in Canada, or perhaps they'll use some of it between Canada and US as well. We shall wait and see. But what's exciting is the fact that most of these, so in case of American Airlines, the flagship suite, the pictures are fantastic. If it lives up to basically half of what the pictures are making it look like, I think I'll be very impressed in terms of what the product itself, the hard product itself, the soft product again remains to be seen what we get from these routes. Yeah, so that's American. I played around with the dates and such. Oof, the as with most things, I suppose the inaugural flight on December 18th between from JFK to LAX and also the one returning the same day, LAX back to JFK, everything was priced $4,000 or more US one way. So obviously not doing that, and nothing was available on points just yet. And I think the flagship suites were sold out within minutes of it going into the roster. I looked for several weeks into February. The cheapest I found was $2,500 between JFK and LAX. Again, not something that you would want to drop just to experience this firsthand, but nothing was available on points on these A321 XLRs. I suppose that's not what the intended demand. I mean, that's not what they intend to, or that's not how they intend to fill the seats at this point, because they obviously want to be able to, because while the demand is super high, they'll make it available on cash only. Let's wait and see if we are able to find other flagship suite availability. But as of today, when I looked pretty much every week all the way through to February 11th, nothing is available on points on American, which is too bad. But at the same time, given the cash pricing, I don't think anything will be available at uh, what your standard pricing is, because some of the business class are not the flagship suites, so some of the non XLR flights, even they were like 105,000 American, 110,000, 125,000 American for one way on these routes. So I don't expect the flagship suite to be available on points particularly. Okay, so we'll stick to American. American shared something else that caught my attention recently. They announced their partnership, new partnership with the coffee company. So they're switching their coffee offering. They're now offering Lavazza coffee, which is great. And that made me think, oh, do I know all the airlines in North America and which coffee they serve on board? So I'm gonna, well, you can look it up yourself. But United is Illy Coffee, which is fantastic. So I was wondering if I knew all of them. I knew only a couple, and you can help me out on the other ones. I wrote down the ones I kind of knew. So United is definitely Illy Coffee. JetBlue is Dunkin'. Don't ask me why I know. This is just stuck in my mind. And I knew Delta and Starbucks had a thing going, which is great. I did not know Air Canada was exclusively serving Balzac's coffee. And can somebody confirm that's true? Balzac's is a Toronto-based coffee roastery, I suppose. It's fantastic coffee. That's what we use at home. We absolutely love Balzac's. But Air Canada using Balzac's, I did not know that was a thing. Porter apparently is also serving Balzac's. I tried to look up very quickly, but I couldn't. And clearly, I haven't paid close enough attention to know what Air Canada and Porter were serving in terms of coffee. Because for Porter, I thought they had teamed up with, or maybe it was a limited edition thing. I thought they had teamed up with one of the famous Quebec companies, the Quebec Coffee Roastery. I forget their name, but I knew Porter was aligning themselves with a partnership with a Quebec company for their coffee, and Balzac's was Air Canada, which kind of surprised me. WestJet, and I've asked you guys these before, and somebody confirmed already. WestJet still serves McDonald's coffee, which is fantastic. And we've spoken about this, but bears repeating for those of you that were big Tim Hortons fans back in the day and suddenly find that McDonald's coffee is amazing. That's because McDonald's bought out the entire supply chain when Tim Hortons dropped their original supply chain when they were sold off to Wendy's. So, which is why a lot of the Timmy's aficionados suddenly found their favorite coffee being served at McDonald's now. Anyways, that's the only reason I remembered WestJet and McDonald's. And I know a lot of you love your United Sundae, like the ice cream thing that they serve in, which apparently is very popular, and everybody likes it. Anyone listening in, or those that are logged in right now, is anybody is anybody a big coffee aficionado? Do you think coffee makes a huge difference, or do you look forward to a coffee beverage when you are flying, say, Air Canada Signature Suite, or if you're flying first class with any of the airlines that serve your favorite coffee, and you're like, you know what, this is fantastic, and I kind of look forward to it? Yeah, Heather says, I don't drink tank water. Fair, fair. I do like a nice coffee, but I'm a very simple sort of person in a way that when it comes to my coffee, that is, I just want black coffee. And oftentimes, as long as the coffee is smooth and not very acidic, I'm happy to drink any kind of coffee. So I can't tell one coffee from the other. What I mean is one brand of coffee from the other. If you served me Starbucks on an Air Canada, I wouldn't go, hey, this is not Balzac's. What happened to my Balzac's? Because I just wouldn't know that level of so I guess I'm not a connoisseur, but at the same time, I do like my nice black coffee on a flight, regardless of which where I'm traveling up front or back in economy. Right. So that was all the coffee thing. And how did I get here? Oh, yeah, because American had shared that they were entering a partnership with Lavazza Coffee, which was fantastic, which made me think, oh, do I know all of them? And I kind of tried to list Air Canada. I had no clue. And Porter, I thought was one of the Quebec companies. But when I quickly looked up what was Porter serving, Balzac's came up. And I was kind of surprised that they were doing Balzac's. They used to, I think, back in the day when they were just a Billy Bishop operation. They did have a partnership with Balzac's, but I'm pretty sure they've moved on from that to a different one. Uh, Speaking of sort of these silly information, if you will, silly aviation information. I also got because then I started reading about American, right? So I'm like reading, okay, American, what's the coffee you serve? What are the other news items that you've shared with us over the few months that were beyond the typical routes and network and American Airlines? What's it called? Award chart and this, that, and the other. So American also shared something about de-icing recently, and I was like, oh yeah, de-icing. That we're entering the season of de-icing, and I learned through several web pages of American, particularly, that de-icing fluid are two types. One is the orange one, and one is a green one. So often we've seen the green one because if you are standing at the terminal and looking at aircrafts in the winter, you always see that little green patch on them, and then they have just been to the de-icing station. So apparently there's two types. There's type 1 and type 2, or type 4, I suppose. So they're depending on what they're used for. So I guess the orange one, I'm reading this, I did a copy paste, I'm reading this. De-icing fluid is orange, type 1, heated to 140 degrees Fahrenheit and sprayed to remove ice and snow, while anti-icing fluid is the green one. So, you apply the orange one to remove the ice and snow, and then you apply the green one to make sure that no further buildup of ice happens on the wings. And that's why the last one that's put on is the green one. And that's why we see the green one more prominently than the orange one. So yeah, something I didn't know. And according to American's own website, American says American uses approximately 500,000 gallons of glycol, which is the fluid that the colors the de-icing fluid for the 6 months of de-icing season. Sorry, 500 gallons seems a lot, but also tells you a little bit about the air traffic and how many flights have to go through de-icing sometimes. A flight has to go through a couple of de-icing stops before they even take off, which has happened to me several times. Has that happened to you? Have you done more than one de-icing before you left the airport? I think it's fairly common, but I can remember at least a couple of times where we did the de-icing, and by the time we waited for other planes to get on the tarmac and leave, we had to circle back and go back to the de-icing station, or at least in one case, we were back at the gate because of other delays and then had to go around once again to the de-icing. station. Yeah. Alex says different flavors, Mountain Dew or Fanta for the colors. Yeah. So, anyways, that was another random kind of thing that I got into after reading all the coffee conversation um, or coffee news release from American. Um, Sticking to US Airlines, United and JetBlue announced today that they are launching their reciprocal earn and redeem options for all members, which is fantastic news. However, as luck would have it, reciprocal benefits are coming soon, but the pricing for these redemption options. So if I used United miles, which I have a few handy, and I wanted to fly the Mint, I couldn't find anything with the Mint to begin with on any of the US segments that serve the JetBlue Mint service. So I couldn't find anything when I was searching on United. And second, the JetBlue flights I did find on United on direct routes and such, the pricing was absolutely bonkers. Um, Twice. Like it was dynamic, of course, so it killed every value it had. So basically, in my mind, the pricing is a non-starter. We'll have to wait and watch because it's nice to have access to JetBlue because again, both JetBlue and United are a little bit tougher to earn miles here in Canada, but at least you are able to convert your Bonvoy points and whatnot if you had to fly, had to use United miles. And it's always, in my opinion, always good if I have something going on, then I do all my searches and whatnot. In the last minute, if I have a few days, I'll move some of my Bonvoy points over to say a United or an American or whatever I need them for. And I mentioned this before, Cathay sometimes to top up my accounts before redeeming. But in this case, it's a non-starter just because the pricing was stupid. Um, I guess reminder in this case, so we're transitioning back to Canadian Sphere for a couple of minutes until 25th. So what's today? Today's the 23rd. So a couple more days, you can buy the Sustainable Aviation Fuel, so SAF, so SAF fuel through Air Canada and earn SQM for it, so elite qualifying miles. So if you are short on miles, or if you think by the end of the year you might need a couple of thousand miles, this is the time to do it. Just fairly easy and straightforward. Not the cheapest option, but the easiest option for sure, because you can you can earn as much as 5,000 SQM through this promotion of buying the sustainable aviation fuel. And if you did the whole hog and went 5,000 SQM, that's somewhere around $1,700. So would I ask you to purchase 5,000 SQM for $1,700 at the drop of the hat? No, I don't. I don't think that's the best way to go about it. But if you wanted the least hassle, and if you were just 1,000 off and whatnot, and you didn't want to do funny business to get your SQMs, then this might be the most straightforward way of doing it, because 1,000 SQM is just under $350 Canadian. And if, like I said, if you did the full 5,000 SQM, then you're sitting closer to 1,700, 1,694 to be precise, Canadian dollars. So yeah, a couple more days. Do your numbers, do your math, see where you'll be at. And if you think that this is one way of topping up your SQMs, then this might be the day to do it. So that was the SAF. And in terms of reminders and whatnot, also a reminder, put it in your calendars if you haven't already, because I kind of shared that last week. Porter executives will be here on this forum with us, but they are available to meet with us on October 31st, which is a Friday from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. So reminder, heads up, I will share the Zoom details and all of that with you folks here, and also for our Facebook community. So you'll have the details there for you to join in that call directly and engage with them. They're sweetening the pot a little bit because they're also we're going to be doing a giveaway of 2 Porter vouchers, which will be good for a return ticket across their network, which is fantastic. I'm yet to get all the details of that, but of course, before the giveaway, we will talk about if there are any other terms and conditions to that, which can be restrictive in nature. But as someone that has used a couple of vouchers in the recent past, it's fairly straightforward when they give you one of these vouchers. You call in, the booking has to be done on the phone. You call in, give them the routes, and they'll book you, and you give them the voucher number. And you're good to go, that kind of thing. So, anyways, October 31st, Friday, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m., with a giveaway of two Porter vouchers. We'll be speaking with Porter executives. Yeah. What's your, so I wanted to sort of, when the Air Canada thing out of Billy Bishop sort of news broke, and I started to think, what are some of my favorite airports to position out of the US? Because let's be honest, because we always have to position, especially those of us that are looking for sort of aspirational redemptions, particularly for a specific aircraft or, a niche thing that we're trying to do. We often have to position ourselves into the US because far more availability, um, sometimes better, sometimes worse. But we do have to position ourselves to make awards work for us. So positioning flights are one of those necessary evils in our lives. So I wondered what are some of my favorites and what the ones that I've done. And I couldn't, I mean, being out here, out east, that is, in Ottawa, the most common ones that I've done is the three easiest to guess, I suppose, would be Chicago, Newark, and Washington, D.C. I've done Chicago would be number one in terms of how many times I go to Chicago for pivoting or continuing on to a larger, I mean, longer flight, an aspirational flight. Second would be DC. I think Washington, DC, I've done a lot more. And then the third would be Newark. I do my very best to avoid Newark and JFK, just generally speaking, because it's too busy to whatever. Not easy to commute between the airports either. Like oftentimes that the ticketing requires me to go out of JFK, then I then have to go from Ottawa to say a Toronto or whatnot and route or go to Montreal into JFK. Limited, flights. So I think that those are some of the reasons in my case where uh, Washington, D.C., there's been direct flights with Air Canada and with United for a long time now. And of course, Chicago as well. So those have been easier for me to do over the years. Do you have preferred airports and such that you constantly find yourself in? What are some of the pros and cons of your preferred ones? Because the one thing a blind side, I sort of a blind spot for me was Boston. Boston has some really nice long haul connections, and I just haven't done Boston enough. And now with Porter flying direct to Boston out of Ottawa, I thought to myself, I shouldn't sleep on Boston because Boston, oftentimes when I'm looking for award searches, I'm not even putting in Boston as one of my airports to look out of. But recently, I was doing something with Emirates, I think, or searching for something with Emirates. And Boston kept popping up. Boston, Dubai kept popping up with Emirates, and I thought, should not, And then I of course looked up what other airlines and what are the routes does Boston serve. And it was super impressive. That surprised that I had not featured Boston in my searches. So if you have one of those, that'd be great to sort of know and see. Heather says Horizon Air. It's pretty much my only option. That's the airline, Heather, right? But where are you connecting? So you're basically connecting to Bellingham? No, where exactly are you connecting to? So I'm assuming to Vancouver or then going into Seattle. Yeah, Seattle. Yeah, Seattle, LAX, SFO. And maybe there's a question in there. When we talk about positioning flights, how much are you willing to position? Is positioning flight for you typically like what Heather is saying? She's out of Victoria. So Victoria to Seattle, or in my case, a couple of hours to Chicago, or less than a couple of hours to DC or New York area out of Ottawa, or even Montreal or Toronto for that matter. Um, what is a positioning flight like? If would you fly, say, from a Toronto to a Miami or a Dallas and then call that a positioning? I guess you can call anything a positioning flight. Technically, it is a positioning flight if you're booking yourself out of those airports. But what I meant to ask was when you're building your itinerary, um, are you looking for airports that are far, far off as well? Like in my case, when I was going to Australia, for example, my positioning is almost always SFO or LAX. I'm not even, I do try out of East Coast, but almost the award availability is so restrictive, very little available and whatnot, and expensive. So I often just position myself from Ottawa to an LAX or an SFO and then go on to Australia from there. But that's in my mind, that's not truly a positioning flight as much as technically it is. Like, how much would you position yourself, or does it really depend on the destination? If the destination demands that, in my case, that it's much easier out of an LAX or an SFO, I'm willing to go from East Coast out to the West and make a trip out of it just because I have to take that route. Or are you going to be like, no, my positioning has to be within the 2 hours and then hop from there and do a ultra long haul flight to wherever I'm going? If you have thoughts on that, plug that in. Heather says if it's less than 3 hours, it's positioning. Otherwise, it's just an extra part of the trip. Yeah, well put, Heather. That's exactly what I was trying to say. That yes, technically anything can be positioning. I've heard enough people say that, oh, I position myself to London. And I'm like, yo, that's like 7 hours away. In my mind, that's not positioning. That's just exactly what Heather said. That's an extra leg to your overall journey. So you're basically routing yourself to London and onwards. That's not necessarily positioning in the sense of positioning. Uh, Heather goes on to say, but I can't get anywhere in the States directly other than Seattle, so everything Americans starts at that gateway. Otherwise, I'm positioning to a bunch of other places first. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, split ticketing is the other way to do it for sure. That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah, I've done a few split tickets as well. Famously, where did things go wrong? Oh, yeah. My recent split ticketing went really bad when I was trying to get myself to Paris for my Paris to Abu Dhabi flight in first class. And yeah, things got delayed, got canceled, blah, blah. So yeah, not the true. Yeah, I'm always worried about irregular operations, says Heather. That's exactly what happened to me with split ticketing. Alex says we did a reverse positioning itinerary going from Haneda to Dallas and then onward to Toronto on Air Canada, but that was a result of wanting to fly the A350 on JAL and using up the last of my Alaska miles. Nice. Yeah, and that's what I meant. This particular community is so adept at doing these, adding additional, legs to your journey. If it's a whole thing that you're doing, like in this case, going to Dallas and then onwards to Toronto, or doing the true positioning for the in that sense that way you're 2 to 3 hours away from home base and you're just doing that quick hop to open up more options for yourself for your reward redemption. So yeah, I figured that you know this community does it the best. Um, what other criteria would play into this idea of positioning for you? So we've kind of spoken about time. We've kind of spoken about actually the other one that I do. I mean, now most airports have been pretty decent, but I also like positioning to airports where I then don't have like I won't position myself to DCA, Washington area, so national, and then go out of IAD because that is just not just $100 Uber ride or whatever. It's just a massive time suck. I'd rather bring myself to IAD directly if possible. And or Chicago has been really good in that I just get to Chicago, switch a terminal with a bus or train, and then I'm still at the airport, and then I connect and move on. I like those airports. I do not like the tertiary airports, the smaller airport, which is one of the reasons why I try and avoid JFK if I can. And I know JFK has some of the best options in the world. To me, it means nothing. To be honest, I just try and get in relative comfort. But in most cases, I have to come into a LaGuardia or Newark and then get myself to JFK, which is a bit of a pain. Time suck. Just adds more time and more stress in that entire journey. So I try and avoid it. So in my case, I also look for airports that are very easy to transit without having to jump hoops and securities. And like if you can come in and you're already past security, and then even if you change the terminal, everything is, what's the term they use for it? Landside? No, airside? Yeah, if everything is airside and you don't have to cross security again, I will pick that as my positioning option. So in my case, I'm also not just looking at time. I mean, I am looking at time, but what I mean is not looking at the time in terms of distance, like is it 2 hour trip or a 3 hour trip? I'm also looking at what happens after I get there. Am I switching terminal, which requires me to take another Uber, another switch airports or whatever, or am I just simply switching doing a quick terminal change with an airport train or a bus or uh, DC has these weird, whatever they call it, the mobile thingies, the weird looking land cruisers or yeah, mobile lounge. Alex, thank you. They call mobile lounge, but they're so weird looking. It's almost extraterrestrial. Should be on belongs in Mars or Moon or somewhere. But I don't know if there's a reason to that design. But yeah, weird and spooky. Yes, exactly, Sarah. A product of their time, indeed. Yeah, if even that is fine, if because it just shuttles you between the two terminals and you don't have to cross security. The other piece is lounges. If I'm able to get to a nice lounge, so I'll tell you what I mean. Depending on my final destination, I do put a lot of emphasis on a really good lounge at my mm, at my like you know what I mean. If I'm going to JFK, I want to be able to be I want to be able to access a really good lounge. If I'm going to Chicago, I want to be able to access a United Polaris lounge. So I do put a little bit of emphasis on lounges as well. So it's the time slash distance, it's the ease of commuting between terminals of the airport. It's a good lounge as well. And I find that with DC, one of the good things is um, once you're there, you can shuttle between as many terminals as you want, and you're always airside, so you don't have to cross any security. And it's amazing to do lounge hopping because some of the best, I mean, so one of Turkish, for example, Turkish, Lufthansa, um, Polaris, they're all there, and there are some really good lounges in DC, and I kind of like my time there. So I would pick DC more often than the others. Chicago, I think I've only ever done Polaris and maybe a couple of others, just regular, nothing too fancy. But yeah, I've started to put more emphasis on the routing based on the lounge as well, especially if the routing, I do have an option of where to route out of, if that makes sense. Yeah, Sarah says I call the crawler. Yeah, that would be a good name for that weird and spooky vehicle that takes you between terminals in Washington, D.C. Uh, yeah, Ashley, yeah, good question. Heather says, would you drive to a different airport to start your trip? I've done enough. Yes. The answer is, well, pause. Anshul in his 20s would say, yes, I would totally do that. Anshul in his 40s will not do it, will not be driving because again, that just I I don't want to take a 2 hour train ride to an airport. I don't want to take like it just take me from an airport to an airport, nice lounge, off to my destination and just get me there. Even if I'm doing a couple of layovers, that's not bad because actually there's a trip coming up where I'm heading to Toulouse. I'm going from Montreal to Zurich, Zurich to Frankfurt, Frankfurt to Toulouse. I'm doing the milk run just because it was cheaper to do on aeroplane. But the thing that convinced me that it was okay to do is Montreal has good lounges, and I am taking the train and driving. Uh, so the lounges is what convinced me. To your point, Heather, would I do a drive to a different city? Being in Ottawa, I've done many of these drives over to Montreal, and what has changed from my 20s now into my 40s is I would totally drive myself in my 20s. Now, I just book a train or I just find myself doing my utmost best to go from airport to airport as opposed to mixing and matching my mode of transport. And I'm not saying that others shouldn't. You should be able to do that. I mean, airlines are certainly making it easier with some of the bus services we've seen. Ottawa famously has the Swiss Air France runs a shuttle service between Ottawa train station and Montreal. That continues. I'm sure there'll be others that do these, last segment runs, as they're often called in buses and trains or whatnot. I try more I get older, I'm trying my best to not have multiple modes of transportation if I can help it. But this one coming up to Toulouse, the only reason I was even okay with that is because selfishly I wanted to go check out the Montreal Aspire lounges, the recent ones, the recent openings there. So I was like, yeah, sure, check. I'll get a couple of nice lounge visits that I've not had. It'll be nice to write a little review and whatnot. But then again, going to Zurich, going to Frankfurt, yes, one, the biggest thing was it was cheaper. We're talking 87,000 uh, Aeroplan versus like 150 or plus that I was seeing in every other option. In fact, more, 150 or more, 155,000 if I was doing Air France out of Ottawa. So Ottawa, Paris, Paris, Toulouse would have been the most straightforward thing, but I was not willing to spend 155,000 flying blue miles on that itinerary. I'd rather do it for 87,000 and hit up a couple of good lounges along the way. Heather said, so many airplane tickets try to send me to Toronto or Montreal first. There's too much before I'm even getting to the good part of the itinerary. Yeah, fair enough. That's a fair critique. Yeah, Heather says, older me pays for airport parking, younger me is aghast. I've done that too. Yeah, I've actually done not too long ago, pre-pandemic maybe. Priya and I would just drive over, or actually just after the pandemic. Uh, once the once we were able to travel a lot more, we would just drive over to Montreal, leave the car there for 4 or 5 days or a week in Montreal, and then be bopping around somewhere and come back. So we've done that, but in the last few years, done my best to not have to mix my mode of transport. Um, so where did we land? Three things now thus far. Actually, four. We'll take Heather's as well. So we're looking at time. We are looking at ease of mobility once we are at that positioned airport. We are looking at lounges. We are also looking at different modes of transportation if that makes it easier and sort of shortens the time. I totally get that. And I think for those that are looking to save time, if I was able to get myself on a Montreal to Toulouse direct flight, which again was 150,000 or more, then totally would drive over to Montreal just to do that and make it a direct connection. But it wasn't. This milk run versus direct flight to Montreal to Toulouse was still not saving me time. So yeah, those are key things that we look at when we're trying to build an award itinerary. Sarah says, I avoid narrow body planes at all cost, even if it loses time. Sarah, would the are you excited about the XLRs coming through? Because American announced their thing, like XLRs will now have flat beds. So are you saying the traditional way of thinking about narrow body, which is narrow bodies means recliner seats, and hell no, I'm not doing recliner seats. Yeah. Sarah says XLR exclamations. Yes, good. Yeah. So I think when Sarah or anybody talks about that traditional thought process of narrow body versus wide body. It was always about recliner seats versus fully flat beds. But now, with the XLRs coming through, that is a game changer. Hey, speaking of XLR, Indigo, not that anybody would probably care on this call, but maybe you're listening to this. Indigo has launched Indigo Airlines out of India, which used to be domestic airlines, but now is rapidly expanding internationally. They announced their A321 XLR service to London. Mumbai, London, I think, is going. Mumbai, London, and Delhi, London. But Mumbai, London is the inaugural flight, which is, again, as you can tell, keeping a close eye on all these XLR routes being announced and coming into service. It's fantastic to see. And it won't be, I don't think one XLR business class uh, Indigo does not have a fully flat seat or anything like that. They have something called as Indigo Stretch, which is more akin to a business class seat, recliner seats with low cost carry, all of that. But the reason I'm following XLRs closely is because I'm really intrigued to see what different airlines do to the seat configurations. It's not often that you get to sort of be on that, at least for me, since I've come in. What are some of the first aircrafts that came in? 787, I was still not really in the points game to appreciate a 787 coming into service. A350, I think, is the only one I can think of. And then now the XLRs. A350, I really seeked out and got to fly A350 900s when they first launched a few years ago, from DC to Abu Dhabi, I think, or maybe Chicago to Abu Dhabi. I forget, maybe Chicago to Abu Dhabi, in business class. And it was such a fantastic product, reverse herringbone seats. um, that kind of thing. So I was there for that. And now this one XLR seems like the one that a lot of airlines are buying into, and it'll be great to see what kind of configurations we get from all of these on the XLRs. And it's going to radically change how we travel, to be honest. This entire narrow body on these long what's it called, trans-Pacific flights or transatlantic flights will become a thing on narrow bodies thanks to the XLRs. And as passengers, we don't have to give up the idea of being on a fully flat seat. In fact, the couple of airlines that I've shared all have privacy doors and whatnot. I'm not a big privacy door person, but in this case, they are trying to give you a little bit more than what your traditional narrow body experience would have been. So yeah, we wait and see how Air Canada shapes up for us. United has XLRs coming up, I think, as well. Um, yeah, there lots of airlines have the XLRs on order. They're just all waiting for the delivery to come through. The other ones are A350 1000s. And I just haven't heard much from Qantas, who were going to be the first ones to get these aircraft. Project Sunrise, I think they called it. I just haven't heard much, but those are the two Airbus aircraft that I've kind of seen come through in sort of my time of being in the points game. Um, there are several other aircrafts that have come and gone, let's be honest. Actually, hey, we've totally seen the Embraer Porter, what's it called? E195, E2s. E195? Yeah, 195 E2s, Embraer 195 E2s. We've totally seen the advent of that and what that has done to an airline like Porter and the potential of that. I mean, they went from Q400s to this aircraft, which is now connecting them not just across Canada, but also into the US, past the US into Mexico and the Caribbean, sun destinations. And there are rumors, and I'm waiting to get the execs on here live to ask them. I think there are rumors that they filed for slots in Europe, and I don't know how they'll fly the E195s to Europe from, I mean, from where they would fly to Europe. I guess I can make sense of St. John's and Halifax, but I don't know if it'll do the Montreal to Europe flights or Montreal to, say, London or wherever other UK airports or New Edinburgh or things like that. But yeah, fascinating. We'll wait and see what we get from Porter folks. But yeah, um, essentially trying to say it's exciting times ahead if you are an av geek and a points person because you can not only enjoy some great products, you're able to do it at far lesser price, so to speak, than paying cash for it. On that note, I'll see you folks next Friday. Until then, have a fantastic one, folks. Take care. Cheers. Bye.